Hi, Write Writers. Cruz here. Thank you so much for joining me. In this video, we're going to be looking at an Accuplacer Writeplacer English as a Second Language sample essay. This essay scored a 3, and we are going to be looking at the overall essay structure. Then I will do a sentence by sentence review, and then we will have some closing comments besides these opening comments. I want to thank Karma is Key and Dave Shin for subscribing. I hope I'm saying names correctly. Please let me know if I am saying them incorrectly, phonetically, so I can say them properly. But thank you to subscribers. Please continue to, spread the word. And again, if you have any questions or need any essay review, I think I have it pretty sure the Gmail account, askwritewriter@gmail.com, as far as any essay reviews that you might have. I would be more than happy to do that with you. So we have here an essay. I'll go ahead and begin, right, writers? Thank you again for joining me. In this essay, again, we kind of zoom out and look at what's going on. So I want to go ahead and do that first. So I'm going to shrink the screen just a little bit so you can see the entire essay itself. And as you can see, right, writers, if I just scroll down a little bit, I'm not interested in reading the annotations given by Accuplacer Writeplacer because you can do that as well on your own. But what I'm noticing is that the first thing that I see, students, and you may be thinking to yourself, up, I already see what they did. They just gave one giant paragraph. And so when a reader looks at this, it is overwhelming. And readers prefer to have separated paragraphs. So when you're writing an essay, right, writers, it is so important to make sure that you have an introduction, a body paragraph, and then a conclusion or a concluding paragraph. And even if it's just a 1 or 2 sentence introduction and a 1 or 2 sentence conclusion, it helps to break it apart for the reader visually. Otherwise, as you can see, it looks a bit overwhelming and it is actually challenging to read the work. And so that's why I bring this up, right, writers? Please do yourself a favor of visually organizing it into 3 separate paragraphs so that visually it looks appealing to the reader. And this is again separate from what this essay is scored on, which is word use, sentence use, grammar, and organization and development. I think that ties in pretty much with the organization of the essay, of how it looks from an organizational perspective. With that said, right, writers, let's go ahead and take a look at the sentence by sentence and see how the student is doing, what they're doing, what they need to fix and adjust. And then later we'll discuss on our closing comments, we'll discuss the positives. So let's go ahead and begin and jump in. In the first sentence, well, I should preface, and I apologize, right, writers? I'm like, wait a second, what's the prompt? So the prompt is, if you had seen other videos, the prompt is basically to give you a summary. It's if you had received a large sum of money, what would you do with that money? Would you spend it? Would you save it? What would you donate it? What would you do with the money? And that's what the prompt was about. So now let's go ahead and go sentence by sentence review. Thank you, Right Writers, for that little side note or sidebar. Let us begin. If I suddenly receive a large sum of money, which is my dream, first I'll organize a big party. Okay, first sentence is definitely a complex sentence. We see the word if, which is what's called a dependent marker. That's what I call them. They're also called subordinating conjunctions. We see another one right here, which, and we see the comma in the proper placement. So we've got comma, then a transition word first, and then another comma, and then followed with that a complete sentence. So well done on the complex sentence written correctly, and also just having these commas with the transition, perfect. No issues there. They also discuss the topic, and that is receiving a large sum of money. I would argue I agree with this student. I think it would be anybody's dream to just have a large sum of money just appear out of nowhere. Um, so uh, I like that little part of it. That's a little bit of the student's personality coming out, which is my dream. Um, then comes the actual sentence, the complete sentence, or what's called the independent clause. I'll organize a big party. So we are already ready in our mind to be thinking to ourselves, okay, the next sentence then should be associated with a big party, and we'll see how they work. If I had one other, just a little note to say as far as a critique, it would be the student did use a contraction correctly. I will, and they said I'll. The problem is something that I had discussed in a previous video, is when you are writing an academic piece, you tend to want to avoid casual language. You wish to be a bit more formal. You would want to be more formal. And so you should say, I will organize a big party, or I would organize a big party. Now let's go to the next sentence. I'll invite all my cousins and friends, and I'll buy them a lot of things. Okay, so here we have a compound sentence. And I know it's a compound sentence because I see a complete sentence here, an independent clause. I'll invite all my cousins and friends. And then I see the next sentence, I'll buy them a lot of things. And then it's separated by a conjunction. And what's missing here is a comma after friends. Yes, right writers, I understand that they spelled some things wrong, off versus of and friends and cousins. But let's focus, on the content itself. And so I'll invite all my cousins and friends and I'll buy them a lot of things. I love how they have this because it connects back to the party. So the next idea is discussing a party, inviting all cousins and friends. However, we then drift into something totally different, not connected at all to a party, and instead I'll buy them a lot of things. So now we are introducing a new topic, and it throws the reader off. So I'm expecting to invite lots of cousins and friends, and then I'm expecting maybe to hear about what kind of food they'll have at the party, whether or not they'll have a DJ, are they going to have dancing, what will the party look like? We want you to set the scene. However, we don't get that. Instead, we get, I'll buy them a lot of things, which now takes us on a different topic, and then we'll see if the next sentence connects with buying lots of things. So if you start with an idea, right, writers, please develop that idea, because again, if one of the parts is organization and development, then develop the party idea at first. And then if you're going to transition, then transition us into another direction after a few sentences. Do not immediately transition us after two sentences and all of a sudden, up, going to a different topic, because it throws the reader off. And it's just sort of like if you're driving in a car and you just start swerving, or you like make a quick right turn and then a quick left turn and then a quick right turn, and then we're like, I'm starting to get dizzy because you're taking me in all of these different directions. And so that can be jarring for the reader. Let us continue now to the next sentence. As you see, right writers as well, separate issue, the contractions and the casual writing in that. Next sentence. The second thing I'll do is to buy a house and especially a car for my husband. Okay, so we talk about buying them lots of things. Now we still don't know what it is that you're buying your cousins and your friends. And then we're now going into a new idea, which is you will buy a house and you will buy a car for your husband. So this is a simple sentence. I will say from a sentence fluency standpoint, I do like how the student began with a complex sentence, then moved into a compound sentence, then they moved into a simple sentence. So I do appreciate that the writer did that. That demonstrates a grasp of sentence use. However, the ideas are getting lost because there are too many, and we do not know as a reader what to focus on because you're taking us down a different road when we were on a road and then you switch directions and now we're going elsewhere. So again, I'm going to keep using that automotive metaphor, or think about it as a train and the route of the train changes, and that can be, again, upsetting is maybe too strong of a word, but it confuses the reader. Let's move on to the next sentence. Then I'll pass to the most important project. Okay, so this is a misuse of the transition word then versus than. So when you're using than is a comparison. So let's say you said something like, I make more money than you do, Cruz, and that's great. So that is a comparison. You're comparing how much you're making to how much I'm making. And so that is used as a comparison. But here, I believe the writer wants to use it as a transition word, which is then. Then, comma, I'll pass to the most important project. Now, pass is a little bit of a strange use of an action verb. You would rather say something like, then I'll move, or I'll move along to the most important project, then I'll move to, as opposed to passing someone. Because this sort of pass sounds a bit awkward. So just watch out for that, right, writers. And it would be considered a simple sentence. But because they use the word than, it sounds more like a fragment. So please understand the difference, right, writers, or just make sure the difference between then and than. And as we continue to look at more essays, obviously more will come out. We continue. So now, okay, so let's go back to the ideas here. So we went from a party, cousins and friends being purchased things. Now you're buying a house and a car for your husband, and now we're moving on to an important project. So think about that, right, writers? How many ideas that is? Party is one idea. And I'll include the inviting cousins and friends as part of that idea. Second idea, buying them lots of things. The next thing is buying a house and a car, which you could argue is a separate idea, but let's just say a house and a car. And then now we're on to the most important project. And the writer has said it's the second thing that you'll do. But I would argue, no, it's actually the fourth thing because you've already mentioned four ideas. So again, be careful. Focus more on one or two ideas, develop those two ideas in depth, and that will ensure a better score. Moving on to the next sentence. As me and my husband are doctors in our country, comma, we can't exercise here in USA. Okay, so we've got some grammar issues here, but I see how they're using a complex sentence. They're using the subordinating conjunction, or what I call dependent markers, because they're used to make dependent clauses, which is why I like to call them dependent markers. We have a dependent marker, the comma is used correctly, and then we have the independent clause right here. Again, we go back to the contractions. We cannot exercise here in the USA. But the problem is here is the grammar. So as me and my husband are doctors in our country, we cannot exercise here in the USA. So we go from I'll pass, or let's just say they said move. I'll move to the most important project. So as a reader, we're expecting you to tell us what the project is first. Then you talk to us about you and your husband being doctors in your country. Because what happens is you're telling us that you're doctors first, but now you've not told us what the important project is. And so because of that, we feel lost as a reader. And again, besides the grammar issue, instead of as me and my husband are doctors in our country, we cannot exercise here in USA. You could say something like, because my husband and I are not doctors in our country, we cannot exercise or practice medicine here in the United States. Again, I would argue, though, that sentence should not come after important project because we need to know what the important project is first. Now we're moving on to the next sentence. In fact, I'm able to spend all my money to release this dream. Okay, excellent use of a transition word, in this case, more than one. In fact, and you could argue almost like a conjunctive adverb. They just forgot the capitalization, but they used the comma correctly. Then they have a simple sentence. But here's the catch, right, writers? And again, the conjunction I am. In fact, I am able to spend all my money to release this dream. Okay, so releasing this dream, first, we do not still know what the dream is. And then I'm able to spend all my money to release this dream. We are confused. This sentence is bewildering. It bewilders me because I don't really know what they're talking about. So you're spending all your money to release this dream. So are you saying, in fact, I would rather sacrifice all this money to make this dream a reality or to make this dream come true? Because if you're releasing a dream, you're letting it go. So I'm just confused about that. And again, we're still waiting for what is that dream or what is this most important project. Let's move on to the next sentence. To do this, we have to learn English very well because we must have a height level in English, or I think they meant high, because we must have a high level in English to hope to pass the test to take residency. Okay, so to do this, okay, this is the project, this is the dream. We do not yet know what the dream is. And so you have to be clear to the reader. So tell us what your dream is, which is my husband and I wish to practice medicine in the United States. But we are not told that. As the writer or as the reader, you're forcing us to do the work. Do not force the reader to do the work. Be crystal clear in your writing as far as what it is you are trying to tell us. Now, with that said, as far as the grammar goes here, to do this, we have to learn English very well. No comma is needed because we have the word because, and it's because is in the, because it is in the middle of this sentence and we're using the subordinating conjunction here, you do not need a comma. Why? Because you started with the independent clause first. So no comma is needed. And technically, this is a very giant dependent clause with a lot of infinitives: to hope, to pass, to take. So when you have to plus a verb, that is what is called an infinitive. And because we must have a high level of in English, to hope to pass the test to take residency. So to hope to pass our residency tests, or to pass, because obviously you, in order to pass, I guess it's sort of inferred that you hope that that will happen. But if you want to include hope, that's fine. In English, to hope to pass our residency tests. And I say our because, again, the writer was referring to her husband and herself. So that is my issue with this sentence. English should also be capitalized. But again, we are still we're still not clear as far as what the dream is. And now we're being told that they have to work on their English so that they can pass their residency exams. to then be able to exercise medicine in the United States. Now we move on to the next sentence. So we'll registrate in the most serious schools and offer the most interesting books. Definitely a little bit difficult to understand here because I assume, let's say they meant register. So we'll register in the most serious schools. And so obviously this means like the most advanced schools or scholarly schools. In the United States, a serious school, that translation is a bit off, and it's awkward. So we don't use serious schools. We might say something like, academically challenging schools, prestigious schools, prestigious universities, um, you know, compelling colleges, medical schools, something to that effect, less so than serious schools. In addition, the writer is using so, and it's a conjunction, and they're using it more as a conjunctive adverb or a transition word, and they should have used something a bit more interesting because it looks awkward. So, comma, we'll registrate in the most serious schools and offer the most interesting books. And then we have offer the most interesting books. Not really sure what happened there. Again, sort of taking us in a very different direction, and then now the reader gets confused. I was just trying to think, right, writers, what might be a good transition word rather than so for that. And so you may say something like, thus we will register, in the most prestigious schools or a reputable medical school, and then go from there. Again, because we don't really know, and offer the most interesting books, what that is referring to. With that said, this sentence is considered a simple sentence. Now I will move on. When our English is too good, we'll start to prepare the medical exam. And so what they're really saying, this is another complex sentence with a dependent clause. It's a DC, dependent clause, comma, independent clause. When our English is good enough or is satisfactory, we will then start to prepare for the medical exam. So this sounds very conversational and slang like, rather than formal. And again, the capitalization on the English because we're referring to a language. When our English is good enough, we will then start to prepare for our medical exams or a medical exam. So, but I say exams because again, the writer mentioned, her and her husband. So, in the meantime, again, notice how we still don't know what the dream is, which is obviously practicing medicine. Moving on to the next sentence, at least here is one plus that I can say, and that is pretty much this is all connected to medical school in some way. So that's good because they have a nice run of the same idea. And even you could argue up here, this was really where it started to take shape. But again, it just was not specified. It was not specific as far as this idea of practicing medicine in the United States. Back to the next sentence. This one is very difficult. So during this preparation, we could not work, so I'll reserve a sum of money, especially for shopping and medical cares, until the day of the exam. And so in this case, this is a very long sentence, almost a run on. We've got a compound sentence because we've got the comma conjunction. Just need a space right between the comma and the S. So during this preparation, we could not work. Then they have another comma conjunction. So I'll reserve a sum of money, especially for shopping, comma, and medical cares until the day of the exam. No comma needed here. Again, I see independent clause, then independent, a very long independent clause. And so when you have this happen, right, writers, it would be better if you actually broke this up into different sentences. So this one is very difficult, comma, so during this preparation, we could not work, period. Therefore, I would reserve a sum of money, especially, for shopping and medical care until the day of the exam. So make those two separate ideas rather than having a run on sentence. In addition, again, this connects back to, medical care until the day of the exam. We are still, as a reader, lost as far as what the big project is, what the dream is, which is to practice medicine in the United States. And I'm saying this, right, writers, not to belabor the point, but I mean it to say I keep waiting for it as a reader, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm like, maybe the next sentence, maybe the next sentence they'll tell us what this dream is. And so I'm secretly hoping, having my fingers crossed that the student will take us there soon. Next sentence. Of course, medical school are very expensive. Great transition word, of course, comma, medical schools are very expensive. And again, notice how this is all connected, which is great. The idea is expanded and elaborated upon, still looking for the ultimate dream, the important project. Next sentence. Registrations need a lot of money. Don't forget books, which are expensive too. So basically, what they're saying is, registering for classes requires a lot of money or a lot of funds. And then do not forget books, which are expensive too. You would want to have a comma here after expensive. And just a side note there, this is a what is called a run on sentence, because here, they, rather than using a comma, they should have a semicolon, because registrations only need a lot of money. And really, I think what they're saying is registration not only requires a lot of money, but do not forget that books are expensive too. In this case, they wrote them in two separate sentences. And so, because this is a complete sentence, registrations only need a lot of money, even though it sounds a little bit awkward. Don't forget books, which are expensive too. They should have used a semicolon instead. Don't forget books, because they are expensive too. So again, that sentence really needs a rework on it. However, it is still on topic of this idea of medical school and wanting to practice medicine in the United States. Still haven't gotten to the most important project. I'm bringing that up again, the most important project, and still not discussing again what this dream is. So we're still waiting for it. We're still waiting for this part, the most important project, and also this dream. And so we'll see. Maybe she does it in the next sentence. But I'm ready to spend all my money until the last cent to become a doctor in USA. Cha-ching! Yay! Okay. Thank you, writer. She made it. Okay, so we have a conjunction here, which we do not want to start a sentence with a conjunction. And I emphasize it, right, writers, and I said, but, but I'm ready to spend all my money until the last cent to become a doctor in USA. And I emphasize it and overemphasize it, right, writers, because when you hear it, you're like, ooh, that sounds really harsh, Cruz. But I'm ready. So I bring that up. Use a different word. Use however, comma, I am ready to spend all of my money until the last cent. So if you're spending all your money, do not be redundant and say until the last cent. We already know you're going to spend all your money to become a doctor in the United States. Finally, we have gotten to the dream. So here, this sentence should really be up here, right after important project. Then I'll pass to or I'll then we will move, because they mentioned husband, then we will move to our most important project. We will spend all of our money, all of our monies, or all of our funds, all of our inheritance to become doctors in the United States. And listen to that, right, writers. And then, as me and my husbands are doctors in our country, we cannot exercise here in USA. So if this sentence were moved, I mean, I don't know. Part of me says maybe they would have scored a 4, and that would have helped with the organization and development, because again, now all these other sentences are now connected finally to this part right here. And so it took all of this to get to the dream, to get to that important project. And again, I want to highlight it so you can visually see how many sentences we had to endure before we finally got to the main idea here, which is, using all of the funds to become a doctor in the US. I digress. Thank you, student, for finally getting to the main idea. Yay! Okay, let us move on. If we'll pass this exam before we'll start residency, we'll need a rest, so I'll buy 2 tickets for me and my husband to visit our parents. Okay, so this is a great example of, again, a run-on sentence. And partly, it's not that it's written incorrectly. It's actually written grammatically. It's fine. The commas are in the proper places. Um, as they could put a comma right here before we'll start residency, comma, we'll need a rest. But that said, right, writers, it's just there are too many different ideas. So we go from passing an exam, starting residency, needing rest, buying 2 tickets, and visiting parents. So if you think about it, those are 5 different ideas. And those 5 ideas are trapped in one sentence. That is not what you want to do, right, writers? You want to just focus again on one idea or 2 ideas and then move on. So she should have maybe said something like, if and when we pass this exam, and before we start our residency, comma, we will need rest. Therefore, I will buy 2 tickets for my husband and I to visit our parents. Or, before we start residency, or after we pass our exam, and before we start residency, comma, we will need a break, or we will need rest. Therefore, or thus, or hence, I will buy 2 tickets, or we will buy 2 tickets, or I will buy 2 tickets for my husband and I to visit our parents. So again, separate those ideas. Do not cram a bunch of different ideas into one sentence. Please help the reader. You do not want to bombard us with too many ideas. And I'm noticing that again with English as a second language writers, is that you're wanting to impress us. If you're wanting to impress your reader, oh, I've got all this knowledge and I can show you all these different types of sentences, sentence structures that I have, and all of these ideas that I have, and you're wanting to cram it in and shove it into a very small box, when in fact you should do the opposite. You should have 1 or 2 ideas, let those ideas flow and elaborate on them, and let that be super clear and transparent. And it allows the reader the breathing space that they need to absorb what it is you're trying to get across in your essay. Moving on. After this, my husband will continue his studies and will try to have a baby for who I'll offer beautiful things, for whom I'll offer beautiful things, and I'll spend with him a nice time. Okay, so in this case, this is a little bit confusing. So after this, comma, that's fine. My husband will continue his studies, comma, and will try to have a baby, period. Because then you're now telling us for whom I'll offer beautiful things, comma, and I'll spend with him a nice time. Now, here's the problem. We also have a pronoun him. However, we don't know if him is referring to the baby because she may have a son or the husband. So that can be confusing. And that's why it's better, again, to break up ideas, because this is another example. My husband will continue his studies, one idea, and I'm trying to figure out why does she not continue her studies? But then they're going to try to have a baby. Then the baby's going to have beautiful things. And so that's the third idea. And then the fourth idea is I'll spend with him a nice time. So that's four different ideas trapped in one sentence. And this is a run on because there's no comma here after studies and there's no comma here after things. But as I said, right, writers, in addition, we start to get confused because four different ideas are trapped, and we don't know if him spending with him a nice time is referring back to the baby or referring back to the husband. So we're confused. With that said, then I will move on. When he will be 3 years old, I continue my studies. Okay, so this is a complex sentence. So when our baby is 3 years old, comma, or now we know he is referring back to the baby. When he is 3 years old, comma, I will continue my studies. And then, so a complex sentence, so a comma should be after old, but again, it should have been placed maybe somewhere else. And the essay just stops. So we have no conclusion. And we are left with imagining this woman with a 3-year-old baby, and then the baby's 3, and then she goes back to school to continue her studies. But the essay abruptly stops. And we have no conclusion. We're just sort of left in suspense. We are left with a cliffhanger, and we are not watching a soap opera. So, or a Netflix series waiting for the next show. And so, writers, again, I appreciate that I can definitely hear the voice of this writer. I am so passionate about, or I sense that passion, and I'm passionate about her fulfilling her dreams of her and her husband, becoming doctors in the United States, and I'm like cheering for this person. And I hope that she did, in fact, her and her husband made this dream come true. However, and I appreciate again being able to break this essay down, but I hope you can sort of see, writers, where the breakdowns begin. So the biggest breakdowns for me really are this lack of direction. If they could have a redo or a rewrite on this essay, they would do so much better if they, again, did not try to include so many ideas within one sentence. Impress us more as a reader with your ability to elaborate on a very clear idea rather than bombarding us with idea after idea after idea after idea, because we get confused. We become confused, we become lost, and as readers you just start to check out. You just start to go, your mind just starts to drift, and you're like, I've become bored even reading this essay because I'm taken in so many different directions that even as the reader we begin to wander. And because we're sort of lost in this forest. So I hope, writers, that this was helpful and useful, especially to my English as a second language writers. And I will say thank you for subscribing to my channel, our channel. We are in this together, and I want all of my students to succeed and or subscribers to do well in writing. And I hope that these videos ensure your success and help you to recognize your weaknesses and your strengths and use those strengths to your advantage. Thank you again, Write Writers. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for subscribing. Please spread the word. And I will again put a link up for Quill. Quill is amazing at helping with grammar and sentence structure and looking at how sentences are created. You can make a free account. I am getting no funding or sponsor money from Quill. They're a nonprofit organization and they're great. And so, again, I will attach that link. But I encourage you, writers, please, please, please make an effort to just focus on one or two ideas maximum and get the most out of that one idea rather than attacking us with too many ideas. All right, writers, take care. Have a wonderful rest of your week. In our next video, we will look at another essay which also scored a 3. Bye-bye, writers. Love you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.